honestly, it started off with 100 entrepreneur, especially with Bob, saw something in me before I walked away from Walter Reed that I didn't even see in myself. I'll be honest with you on that. This whole construction business thing that came from 100 entrepreneurs and Bob. I, Bob had said, well, you know what? One day you're going to start a business. And I looked at him and said, well, not in construction. And I literally walked away. I didn't even, and it wasn't until like 2 years later when I was working at North Carolina, I'm like, humble pie. I called Bob. Hi, Bob. How are you doing? Everything going great? But you know that construction company you were telling me about? Can we have a conversation? And honestly, that's how that came about. 100 entrepreneurs, especially with Patty and Pat, and Amanda and Bob, the vision for this has always been, which is different a lot from other organization. It is about you and what you want to do when you're moving on from here. They don't want anything back from you besides maybe a little bit of time. But the investment they put these lunches, the presentations and the different perspective of entrepreneurs, you're not going to get that anywhere else. I want to be honest with you. People ask me all the time, especially now even with Turner, is why do you think it's important to hire veterans? I said, there's many multiple reasons, but I had to give you one defining reason is that we follow up and follow through better than most people. That's how the way we're trained to think and try to do things. We don't always have to have the answers. As CEO and president, I never had to have all the answers. I was very direct about what I knew and what I didn't know. And so by asking the art of asking questions, put me out there as vulnerability. But I think as a leader, you need that vulnerability, right? But then putting that with the words no and outlining the reasons why I didn't want to chase that, not for the money, it's because it wasn't right or for whatever reason. All of a sudden now the phone couldn't stop ringing. So after like 2013, 2014, we grew every year up to then, from 2010, but it just seemed like 2014, it just took off. And actually one of the projects that kind of boosted up, my reputation and what Anvil Builders did was with Turner Construction. We built out the Trans Bay Terminal, which is the largest transportation depot west of the Mississippi, during that time, and it was a amazing project. Like literally, it was like a 3 to 4 city block project we were building. Turner Construction took their blind faith and really invested into my company with an opportunity. Literally, the first contract that I got from Turner was um, probably about started off was like a $2.5 million, and then more got added on as we built trust, we built credibility, really being honest about what we were able to do. By the end of 18, when I left the Bay Area, that contract ended up being a $15 million contract. Still, under my reign as CEO and president, that was the biggest contract that I had. Uh, and it was an amazing journey too. I think during my time at Walter Reed and you're wandering, I was there for like 16 months. One of the toughest challenges for me was, what am I going to do next? That's the question that's always gets asked. You may not say it out directly, but it's definitely something you ask before you know you're going to get medically retired, right? That is the toughest question. And if this answer helps you in any kind of way, you don't have to have it all figured out when you leave Walter Reed, right? You got plenty of time, but you got to do something, right? I think, let me break some misconceptions here. A lot of the guys that were at Walter Reed with me was like, well, I'm getting this great disability check. I can live this off the rest of life. As you've seen over the last 16 years since I've been at Walter Reed, the cost of living has gone up. Economically, inflation has skyrocketed. Whatever you're receiving there isn't really a plan, right? One of the things I don't like what the military does is it's like, hey, you have a GI Bill, let me shove you down the educational route when some of that isn't for people that don't want to go back to school, right? And I think some of our policies now have changed where we're allowed to use the GI Bill for certain things, but just have a plan, right? And even if the plan isn't an immediate and in effect as soon as you leave Walter Reed, I'll be honest with you, give yourself a break when you leave Walter Reed too. A time for adjustment and transition. As an entrepreneur, I'm very big on making your money work, right? And some of that, sometimes I'll take investments, sometimes that's starting another business and putting that in there. We were on our way to a very successful second venture, my wife and I, with the franchise. However, in 2020, when President Trump said that he was shutting down the economy, every single bank out there literally withdrew their terms and their offer. I was literally, no joke, 24 hours away from getting the rest of the funding to build up my store. My store was already 75% built. And the development company that I had made a deal with had sold the property as well too. So there's so many different factors because everyone was in a panic because of the pandemic. And so when I built out the business plan, I did not plan or risk mitigate a pandemic. Sorry, that was not even part of my vocabulary. Didn't even see that happening. Majority of my buyout money came to those losses, and it's probably equivalent to over at least $500,000 that I lost the capital that I built and raised. And so, just to be honest there, that was very tough. The one thing, and just be careful if you're going to be joining a franchise, I will tell you to make sure you know that leadership team and that corporate team. You make sure that they understand that if something happens to you, that they're there to support you. I just didn't ever feel that I was supported in that way. Like literally, if I hadn't had the buyout money, I probably would be still heavily indebted to those loans that to the investments I already put out because I had put out my own money. I was waiting for the bank so I can recover that money back, and I never did. So that really money I spent was money that was gone already. But for those of you that are looking in a franchise, there are great franchises out there with great support. You need to interview them. They need you more than you need them. So just make that very clear. When franchises try to sell you a franchise, they're just selling you a dream, right? But it's your job to pick apart that dream, to figure out where that risk is, and understand the financials of that, and making sure that you have the right support and resources to get through that hump. Struggles. I think the struggles define your character, and how the way you look at perspective in life and what you want to do. For me, it's always been about perspective. And so when I joined Turner, actually, this is a funny story because I was finishing up my grad school, my master's in global leadership and management. As a serial entrepreneur, you're always looking at the next opportunity. So Bob and I are having a conversation, and then this is how the conversation went. Bob says, "Hey HT, Turner Austin has is building a new office. You need to go support them." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not working for anybody. I don't know how to work for anybody else after I worked for myself." He's like, "Well, what are you going to do after grad school?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't figured it out." He goes, "Great. So let me make a call for you." Picks up the phone, calls the CEO of Turner out of New York City, Peter Davern, who's a big, strong supporter of 100 entrepreneurs. He's like, "Oh, you remember HT? Well, you know what? He lives in Austin. He can help you." And so, literally, this conversation came about. I am now the community and citizenship manager at Turner, but I work with small business. I advocate for small businesses. If I was to summarize to you in 2 words what this job is the equivalent to, it's like your government relations, right? I deal with legislation. I'm advocate for our small business with the state and federal entities, city entities as well too, but also just like in any NCO in my office, in my unit, I'm also the morale and welfare person for our internal team. So, I wear different hats, different roles. I have different pillars. But one of the things though, why I love this opportunity and love this job, it fits along with my values, right? Building impact. I'll say this again, I'm on borrowed time. I think every single one of us disabled veterans are on borrowed time. You don't get to escape death twice, I would say. And some of us who do are, you got 9 lives. But this time around, what sparked joining the Army in the first place was in my prior to enlisting, someone had asked me this very interesting question on a drunken night. If you were to die today, what would someone say about you? I had no response to that. I was 26. I was very irresponsible. Um, and so moving forward, this time around, when I say build an impact, that is my life goal. I don't care where I build it, as long as I'm building it. It could be a relationship that I have with someone else, right? If I'm helping them get to the next level, I'm building that impact. At least now, when I go to the gates of heaven and God asks me, you know, what have you done this time that's been different from the first time around? I can say, hey, I built this impact in people's lives. I looked beyond myself and sacrificed or did so and so for their sake, not for my own personal glory of what I wanted to do. And so this job allows me to do that. I work with entrepreneurs all the time, small business, especially in the construction industry and trades, and understand them. I think one of the things that, when you're in an environment like this, everyone assumes you're opening a business for profit. I think the most important question I think we should ask every single small business is understand the story of why they're in business. Because you're going to be shocked to find the stories and how you build those relationships by understanding why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
I would not be sitting here today, one, for the grace of God, without the grace of God, but also the brothers that put me together that night to put me on a bird to go to on a C-130 to Lundstool to back to Walter Reed, right? It took a lot of those components. Part of this is that if I don't live to the fullest capabilities, then I'm wasting the efforts of of the brothers that helped save me that night. And so part of this is giving back to the community that has kept me alive. My pride and joy is in the veteran community, but also because I want to see other veterans thrive. I think there's nothing worse than seeing a successful entrepreneur keep it to themselves and not passing it forward to have other veterans grow. And here's my philosophy on that. The first time you climb a mountain peak by yourself, it's a great accomplishment. I get it. But when you look down, you're at the mountaintop by yourself. There's probably about, I don't know, 10 fingers pointing at you. They're hunting you down, right? Because they're they can't relate to your success. And so when I learned that the first time around, I made it a purpose to bring other people up to the second mountain peak because I want to be able to celebrate with someone. When you're up there by yourself and you're celebrating, no one understands. It's kind of lonely up there. So I think it's part of the giving back and giving forward where we can celebrate our accomplishments together and then share that moment and support each other, right? And everyone has a different perspective. I think the one thing that where truly success comes from is active listening. We're so caught up um, being right or being wrong. We're so caught up in thinking that we have the right way to do it, when literally, if you just spend an extra 20 seconds, 30 seconds at most, just to actively listening, not hearing, because hearing goes in one ear and out the other, but actively listening, you might find another perspective that can help you get to the next level. The reason why we're stuck where we're at is because we think our way is the best.
Nice.
The recovery process, a lot of PT, a lot of OT. I had to learn how to walk again. Obviously, with one prosthetic eye, I had to learn how to look at things. My hands were bandaged all the time. Mobility of hands and fingers was just tough. It was learning how to do everything again. But it was a humbling experience, right? When I talk about perspective, this is the perspective that I think matters the most. It was tough. And in the moment, you don't see the value in it. But as you reflect and you get through each day, right? And the whole point is to get through the next day. Don't look ahead of the line like 15 months, I got to get out of here as fast as I can. Just take it day by day. Because one thing you'll find out is once you leave Walter Reed, you get caught up into the grind, the daily grind, minutia of going to work, doing your normal stuff. What we always forget to do is take care of ourselves. And this is your
Keep in
one moment.
mind, at Walter Reed, the visitors all look at these patients as heroes. The wounded don't look at themselves as heroes.
Definitely. The word hero is kind of cringing when someone calls me a hero because then I'm like, well, no, the real heroes I know didn't make it home. Um, that's always tough to say, but
Yeah.
they're the ones that gave the ultimate sacrifice. They're the real true ones that, truly did their job and did what they needed to do to make sure we got home. And, you deal with that guiltiness. I actually had to deal with that guilt all the way up until probably about a little bit after the pandemic, 2021 was finally when I said to myself, you know what, enough this hiding from therapy. I went to what is it? What was it called? The program was called Cognitive Behavior CBT at the VA, and literally forced myself to go through that. And I didn't realize that the death of one of my second platoon sergeant, I was in first platoon, second platoon sergeant had passed away, and we were good friends. And before we left, he had a newborn daughter, and I think that always stuck in my head because part of the reason of answering my question, what will people say about you, was that I enlisted because I wanted to relieve one soldier to go home to see their family. I was 26, selfish. I had no one to report to. Like if you lost me, it'd just be another number, right? But I wanted someone to go home and see their family. And when he passed away, I felt like my mission was always incomplete.